Part of the reason why we're here is the requirement from the State Water Resources Control Board for a site supervisor at any site that has recycled water. And it's every 2-year, 2-hour requirement. Part of the reason I want to do this online in the future, just so you guys can do it at your convenience. We're going to work to set up a online portal where essentially you can, on a device, a phone, a tablet, something like that, you can be out in the field, fill out customer site inspection reports. Just try and make this as easy as possible. Cut out the paperwork and not have me standing in here for hours. I'm Ross. I'm a lead facility operator with the Scotts Valley Water District. I think I have a slide about this. Oh, yeah. So let's step back for a second. This is what we're going to be going over today, just learning objectives. What's the joke I always like to kick it off with? By the end of this, hopefully you'll have enough information about recycled water to go home and bore the hell out of someone. So we're gonna run about a little on recycled water, what's going on in Scotts Valley. We're gonna touch on backflow and cross connections, and then we're gonna talk about some of the exciting recycled water projects that are happening around our local area. Brody is in the back. He helps administer this program. Usually he and I are the ones out there in the field doing the cross connection inspections. If you get any correspondence from the district related to recycled water, it's probably from him or I. We have cards, we have contact information on our website. If you guys ever need us, we're available. Ryan Ritchie's my supervisor. He is remoting in. Hi, Ryan. He's too scared to actually show up in person. Morning. But yeah, we're the 3 contacts that you guys should feel comfortable just reaching out if you guys ever need anything. And then you guys, the recycled water site supervisors. You guys are responsible for the operation and maintenance of the on-site recycled water system. And we've broken that down to 4 things that are important. One is preventing cross connections. That's any unapproved connection between your potable water and your recycled water systems. So every 4 years, we'll do that cross connection inspection and verify the complete separation of the 2 systems. The next thing is going to be, the biggest thing is make sure your sprinklers aren't spraying people in the face, but preventing human contact, preventing runoff. Like if there's a break and it's running right into the storm drain, then it's running into the creeks and eventually ending up in the bay. So we want to minimize that. Water use efficiency, it's been the name of the game since forever, but it really started up in 2014. Around here, we've been pretty efficient with water usage. And then the 24-hour contact. Essentially, if there's something that happens in the middle of the night, I might call you. Most of the businesses here, it shouldn't be an issue. But for example, if we find something at the vineyards and people are like, yeah, there's a water main break, but all of us still have water, then it would be one of those things where we might, initiate a cross connection inspection immediately, even if it's 2 a.m. But yeah, that hasn't happened yet. I don't see, but that's okay. I would kick that desk too. What is recycled water? So we're going to get a little bit into that, but we're going to step back first. All water technically is recycled. We have this natural process known as a hydrologic cycle where we have, even this morning, it's not fully raining. We got some rain on Saturday, which was nice. But we have this precipitation that comes off, it runs off either in snowmelt or around here, we have surface water runoff. That again will get evaporated or transpired through plants. It'll condense again and just keep repeating. With recycled water, we've kind of mimicked this process with a couple other more human controls. So recycled water is the product of wastewater. So Scotts Valley, we have 65 plus miles of pipeline, and that distance from the faucet to the sink is not 65 miles long, but that's the difference between potable water and wastewater. Anything that goes down the sink, any drain or anything, that all ends up at the City of Scotts Valley wastewater plant in Scotts Valley. So that wastewater is then treated to local, state, federal standards. Around here, We discharge our treated wastewater down to the city of Santa Cruz. They clean it up a little bit more, and then they discharge it to the ocean. There's a couple other projects that are recycling that wastewater, and we'll get into those later. So again, we have grit removal, we have aeration, we have sedimentation, we have chlorination. And that really starts the process off. There's a couple definitions that I could get into that aren't really going to be beneficial for the site supervisor training. If you're interested in wastewater treatment, the wastewater plant down here and the city of Santa Cruz both offer tours. I find them interesting, but not everyone might. But the idea is we have these processes that'll sit there, clean up the water, remove a lot of the settleable solids out of it. In that level of treatment, there's a couple that, as we move down this list, it's higher and higher levels of treatment. So undisinfected secondary is essentially this previous step without the chlorination. Disinfected secondary 23, the 23 and the 2.2, there's a way to test for coliform bacteria, which is an indicator for cleanliness and potability of water. But 23 would be the most probable number of coliform bacteria per 100 colonizing units. 2.2 would be 2.2 as the most probable number. So again, stepping it down by a decent order. And then tertiary treated is what we have in Scotts Valley. Yeah, look at that. I'm figuring out how to put a red box around things. Pretty cool. Anyways, this is what we distribute as the water district and as site supervisors. This is the water that you have on site for your recycled water systems. And we're going to get into a little bit more of that. Tertiary recycled water is treated with methanol and polymer. Methanol is mainly for controlling nitrification and minimizing the amount of nitrates that are in that water. The polymer does a couple of things. It'll change the charge of different things in the water, so they will start to adhere to each other. And by a little bit of gentle movement, it'll encourage those particles to clump. As they clump, they gain mass. By gaining mass, they get heavier and they start to fall out of suspension. So that's where that sedimentation comes in. So we have water moving through a process. And we'll do a flyover tour of the wastewater plant in a little bit. So this will make a little bit more sense. Filtration, again, similar to that Brita filter that's sitting over there. You guys saw me fill it up this morning. Water ran through media. And with this one specifically, that just pulls out carbon and a couple other things. UV light's a really cool technology. There's water bottles now that have a lid that you can sit there and turn on the UV light. But the UV light like just scrambles the structure of anything. So as far as a way to disinfect or sterilize something, UV light's been incredibly effective. And I'll point out the UV light when we get there. And then chlorination, chlorine's a beautiful thing. That's kind of the wrapper on our candy bar. We can measure for chlorine residual throughout our system. One thing that's nice is we can test for free and total chlorine on our potable water. With recycled water, it should be very low free chlorine, but there's going to be a high level of total chlorine. We'll save breakpoint chlorination. We'll save that for another class. But there's a way to test and start to work to discern if, hey, is this water coming? Thomas and I just spent 3 weeks chasing down a leak that was definitely ours over in the vineyards. And yeah, chlorine was the one that kept pushing us in the right direction. So, this is 900 Lundy Lane. I think Mount Herman runs like this, and Scotts Valley Drive is right up here. I've got another map that we'll show you later. But anytime you run anything down the sink or down the drain, it's going to end up here. This is a flow equalization structure. So this plant, I think, can do up to 2 million gallons a day. Earlier this year, if you guys remember the rains and the flooding and everything we had, this plant got pushed to its max. They have, I think, 5 operators that were down there that were, all of them were doing 24-hour shifts. They were sleeping in their cars. They were working really hard to keep up with everything. But let's see if I can remember the process. So we've got the grit removal. So right up here, as water comes in, it'll first come in here, and they have these giant stainless steel shredders. So everything that will come in will get torn up. That will then bring over here the FES, the flow equalization structure. You can imagine that not everyone takes a shower at the same time, and if they did, they would be inundated with water, and then there wouldn't be water for the rest of the day. The idea is people are constantly using water at different rates throughout the day. So what this does is it provides a little bit of maneuverability for them to be able to say, hey, we're going to run everything at 100 gallons a minute. And if it ramps up, they can kind of stack this up and say, hey, we're going to keep running because we know that inflow is going to start to drop down. So again, this is about just buying yourself a little bit of room to keep things steady in the plant. These are clarifiers. So the next stop we talked about was the methanol and the polymer. So there's an addition from this building into that water that feeds into here. So again, that methanol for controlling nitrification. And then we have, there's an arm that very slowly moves through here. So we add that polymer in. And when I say we, I mean, not me, the city of Scotts Valley. We'll get into the different roles that every agency plays. The water district and the city are 2 separate entities. But when the city gets and adds that polymer, there's a slow arm that moves through this clarifier. And again, it gets the suspended solids to flock together, gain mass, they'll fall out. Then it gets pumped over here to where their filters are. So it'll slowly move down. Again, water comes into the top, goes through that media. And then from here, it can get pumped out to the city of Scotts Valley. At this point, this is where it becomes that disinfected secondary 2.2. But recycled water site supervisor, we have that tertiary grade. So this water, some of it gets pumped over here. I think this morning we did 230,000 gallons from yesterday. So we're in irrigation season. We're doing about anywhere from 100 to 300,000 gallons of recycled water a day. So again, that's going to come from these filters through here. It's going to receive some chlorination, but then it's in here. There's this galley of lights that hang through, and water slowly will move through. And those lights are all those UV lights that'll scramble any microorganism that's in that water. From there, it'll come up, it'll stack up in there, and then it gets boosted out into our recycled water distribution system. With that, we've got about 14 miles of purple pipe throughout the system. And when we take an overview of Scotts Valley, we'll get into that a bit more. Tertiary treated water, that is high quality water that's not approved for drinking. So at all of your guys' sites, you'll have one of those recycled water do not drink signs. But it is approved for landscape irrigation, crop irrigation, dust control, soil compaction, and decorative ponds. In Scotts Valley, largely we're doing landscape irrigation. And then there's for construction purposes, we have a mini bulk program where people can fill up water tenders, use that for dust control, soil compaction, and then we have 1 pond in Scotts Valley. That tertiary treatment, as we ran through the treatment train for the city of Scotts Valley, that tertiary removes 90% of the impurities from sewage, and it approaches drinking water quality, but it's not safe to drink. So yeah, it's still not potable, and it's not suitable for drinking, washing your hands or face, or food preparation. One thing that you'll hear me say probably about 23 times today is don't drink the water. It's really the core of this class is don't drink the water. The entity will remain unnamed, but I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, I was doing one of these trainings, and the the people that were at the site were talking about how they didn't have potable water to one of their maintenance sheds, so they just fill a 55-gallon bucket, like a barrel full of recycled water. And they're like, yeah, when it starts to smell bad, we just pour more bleach in there. And it was like, wait, why are you doing that? Like, oh, just to wash hands and stuff. It's like, okay, don't ever do that. So they're not doing it anymore. But there's reasons they don't do it. So there's bacteria, viruses, protozoa, and parasites. That's the biggest concern we have right now as far as dealing with recycled water. Especially if you have an open wound. I don't know if people paid attention to during the COVID-19
pandemic.
Thank you. A lot of utilities started testing their wastewater streams. And so we were finding that we could find early detection of COVID or a rise in cases through the wastewater stream, then relying on people to take PCR tests or other tests and then report that. Wastewater, you can imagine if you've ever put something down the drain that you wouldn't want to deal with, think about the worst person you know and what they probably throw down the drain. We have contaminants of emergent concern, or CECs. Asbestos used to be a great thing. Everyone loved it. It was in everything. And then we found out that it's not really great for humans to be breathing in. It took us a while to figure that out. Every year, every 3 years, the EPA requires water systems to do UCMR reporting, which is unregulated contaminant monitoring reporting. So the EPA essentially finds 23 to 29 different chemicals that may pose a risk, but there's no current regulations on. So we'll go out and we'll sample for these things, and then people smarter than me will take a look at the potential for health risks. PFOS and PFOA, that's starting to finally get in the news. They're known as forever chemicals. They just changed. We used to be able to detect down in parts per billion. Now we're looking at a fraction of a part per trillion. So we've been able to zoom in a little bit on it. We're finding it everywhere. Alpine lakes that have been untouched by humanity, we're still testing and finding it there. We will be monitoring in November, and then again, I think in April or May. But every water system in the United States is going to be looking at these things. They've been around since, I think, World War II, maybe before. But when we find these things, we'll apply the appropriate treatment technique and comply with whatever public health guidelines are. But with tertiary water, not a lot of people are pouring motor oil into our groundwater wells, but people pour motor oil down the sewer all the time. So we just need to take a precautionary stance on this and don't drink the water. That's two. Pharmaceutical products, a lot of people will just dump their pills down. The city has programs where if you want to dispose of any pharmaceutical appropriately, you can. But yeah, we have found there are studies that link people that are improperly disposing of pharmaceuticals, and we're seeing downstream risks that are to human and environment. Other improperly disposed of materials.
Pharmaceuticals that people take into their body are
Correct.
Causing a problem for the wastewater.
So usually, well, there is that where things don't always bioaccumulate and they'll get flushed out. But then there's also people that'll sit there and open a thing of pills, dump it in the toilet, flush it down. So I think this is where doom and gloom is supposed to be funny. So I think it's actually another slide. If not, I'll bring the joke up later. But recycled water is very safe when proper guidelines are followed, used for the intended and permitted purposes. Willow Pond, in their permit, it says that they can use it for a decorative pond. I don't think you guys are actually using recycled water in that. Spring Lakes is, yeah. So Spring Lakes in their permit, it says that they can use it. But if the vineyards wanted to put it upon, there's a whole new permitting process that we have to follow, update the plans and everything. So in the permit, it'll talk about, so here we do it for landscape irrigation. There are some places that are approved to be a dual plumb building in the sense that you can run recycled water in just for toilet flushing, but not for consumption out of a faucet. Currently, we do not allow that. We're not permitted in Scotts Valley to do that at all. We could work on that, but I don't think it's something in the interest of the district at this moment. But that would be listed in your recycled water permit. So we're going to get to why we're here, but the joke here was the other improperly disposed of materials. If you ever had the opportunity to work with someone that works at a wastewater plant, there's the age-old joke of a kid flushing the goldfish down the toilet. Back in 2007. One of the operators at the wastewater plant found a diamond wedding ring. Contacted, his boss, let them know. So then the city of Scotts Valley put out a little blurb in the press banner, and after about 3 weeks, the diamond ring got returned to a woman at the Oak Tree Villa on Lockwood and Mount Herman. And it had slipped off and ended up down at the wastewater plant. They were able to get her diamond ring back. One of our operators who we stole from the city of Scotts Valley in that grit removal area, he found an action figure of Spider-Man. So there's funny things that you can find in the waste stream. It's not all terrible, but again, no one wants to be drinking diamond rings.
Alligators?
No alligators yet. They used to sell alligators in Scotts Valley.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was a pet store where the Kings Village Ace is, and yeah, I've heard stories. Jump here. So we're bringing it back more down to Scotts Valley. These are the people that are forcing you to be here today. If it wasn't for them, we'd maybe do this training maybe once. But what they do is they do Title 17, which is mainly related to drinking water and protection of drinking water. Title 22 is where the purple book comes in. So that's where all the regulations come in for recycled water. There are 9 regional water quality control boards throughout the state of California. We're in the Central Coast Division. South Bay Water Recycling does a wonderful job at their class. They require 2 hours of YouTube videos, and then it's a 3-hour Zoom meeting or an in-person. I've done that class 3 times. Absolutely wonderful class. This is barely scratching the surface of what they get into. But each regional water quality control board, their job is the protection of aquatic resources, whether it's potable water, whether it's, estuaries, wetlands. These are the people that are charged with taking care of water in the state of California. That's us. That's Scotts Valley Water District. They've got great facilities. They do really wonderful trainings. But as I mentioned, we've got 65 miles of potable pipe. We've got 5 active groundwater wells. We've got 3 active water treatment facilities. But then we also have our recycled water distribution facilities. So as soon as that water is turned into tertiary water, it gets pumped into our system. We've got a tank right behind Scotts Valley High. We've got a booster station right over by the vineyards. And then we've got a recycled water pressure regulating valve. So we've got one arm that heads down Mount Herman and then one arm that heads down Scotts Valley Drive.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
I'll have to leave unfortunately soon, but in terms of the pump, there's a pump evidently on the one up there, and and it activates at different times at different pressures. I just was wondering what that time is and what that means.
Correct. So it's on a variable frequency drive. So what it does is it has sensors where as water usage goes up, pressure will go down. So once it gets to, I believe, 60 PSI, it'll ramp up. It'll ramp up to 110 PSI. So as long as that water's going, that pump shouldn't ramp too high. When it gets to 110 PSI, it'll cut off and that pressure will drop back down. But the nice thing with the variable frequency drive is that it can sit there and oscillate. So the idea is if you're running water and you kick on a couple zones at a time, that should be enough to keep up with it. I'm not sure if there's a timer on it. We require irrigation schedules to be set up to not operate between, Brody, I think it's 9 and 5.
Yeah.
9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We ask people not to water then.
10 and 5, yeah.
10 and 5. The reality of the matter is irrigation systems have leaks in them. We don't expect someone to come out at 6 p.m. to be working on an irrigation system.
Right.
It's very normal, especially if you guys are just working and doing maintenance on the system. More than fine to be doing it during the day.
It's more pressure regulated than time related.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it never goes below 60 ideally.
Ideally, we've had times where pumps have failed, but we do have a system where if there is an event that we deem out of the normal operating things, it'll page our on-call operator. And then all of our operators have tablets that they can remote in to our SCADA system and see exactly what's going on. Power, pretty much on this part of town, can be shaky. So we've got a treatment plant where we get call-outs all the time because PG needs power. We use a lot of power in our treatment process. So when that goes off, the treatment plant will go down. We'll have to go out there for that. Same thing with the Siltanet booster station. If it gets bad power to protect itself, it'll shut off. And then we have to physically go out and get things back rolling again. So there are times where if it's like 11 o'clock at night, we'll come back in the next morning and rectify it. But yeah, we do have phase failure issues out there. So.
Is any of that tertiary water used during the fires or not?
Well, it wasn't used for firefighting. There were places that kept irrigating. And the nice thing about irrigation timers is that'll kick on whether someone's here or not. But half of Scotts Valley got evacuated during the season.
Yeah, we
of
were.
complex fires. And when the evacuation order got lifted, our sanitary engineer with the Division of Drinking Water reached out to us and said, hey, are you guys going to flush your water mains? Your usage probably dropped off. And what we had done is we instructed anyone that was fighting the fire, if they want to come and fill up for water, just go for it. And what was nice is they were doing it all on the outer edges of town. So they were pretty much flushing our mains for us, but then filling up water to go fight the fire. And so we actually had above normal usage for that period of time, and we had half the town gone. So it was a very interesting time.
Oh, definitely.
So we started distribution in 2001, 2002. We've got 63 permitted recycled water use sites. We've got 2 more that'll be coming online in the near future. One's Polo Ranch and one's the Encore. That's at Scotts Valley Drive and Bean Creek. We've got a residential water, like a recycled water fill station, where during drought years, we open that up so members of ratepayers and citizens of Scotts Valley can come up and then fill up to 300 gallons a day. 250 gallons a day. And then we've got the recycled water for construction use. So we've got 6 wharf heads, which is just a single riser, a 2.5-inch connection where people can come and just fill up like a 2,000 to 3,000 gallon water tender. And again, I mentioned we're doing close to 300,000 gallons a day in irrigation season of recycled water. That's potable water. That's 300,000 gallons of potable water that's not being dumped on the ground anymore. So recycled water has certainly helped. If you look at that chart over here, there's a time where you can see we significantly stopped dropping the groundwater levels. around here, we had about 20 recycled water sites. Here. This is where we got into, right here, we were about 60, maybe 55. So as our recycled water usage jumped up, pumping water out of the wells around here dropped down. So a big push from the state for using recycled water is it's preventing the waste of a resource that we really rely on. So both water has been great for that. Again, just throwing out numbers. Last year, 55 million gallons of water that would have been pumped out of the ground stayed in there, and we were able to just recycle water that we've already been using. It's been instrumental, and that keeps water rates down for everybody. So that's our average, about just shy of 60 million gallons a year. It's a decent number. It's a terrible picture. Let's slide our way up. Change bad picture.
Sky Park or something?
Yep, that's Sky Park. This was, I think, early in the drought year. Sky Park is now on, is that?
That's old Sky Park.
Yeah, I think this is before recycled water went in there. So there were times where water had to be restricted because of the drought. And we limited outdoor watering. I think the state of California just passed something last year or 2 years ago saying that decorative turf, non-functional turf, couldn't be watered anymore. So there are green strips over in Sky Park itself, and those have gone just completely dry because they were with potable water. Sky Park itself, because of its recycled water, there's no restrictions on that watering. Sultanan Park, again, nice green. That's just up the street. McDorset Park, again, recycled water. Lovely sign. They're free. I drive by every recycled water site every quarter, and you guys might see me out there replacing signs, or oftentimes I'll have people that just reach out and say, hey, can you leave 5 or 10 signs up by your office, and I'll swing by and pick them up. So signage is a very important thing. We'll get into that a little bit later. Here is an example of a recycled water use permit. That's for here. We talked about permit conditions, other things like that. But yeah, this is for this site. And then oftentimes what I'll do is when I send these out, I'll have a self-monitoring form. Usually what I'll try to do is we'll have a recycled water email blast that goes out to all of our site supervisors. I'll have that there. Ideally, we're working with the Water Resources Control Board right now. And the hope is we can have an online portal. I mentioned that earlier. But again, I have to fill out site inspection reports for every site, and then this site and our other booster station. So I like trying to keep things as simple as possible. If I can just roll out there one day and then sign in, submit the report, we'll be all good. That's our front office. That's one of the newer signs. That's Ryan Ritchie. He's a supervisor, so he's technically kind of here. I think he's still watching online. But this was talking about soil compaction. He's moving some rock around, but before that rock gets compressed, usually you can use water. Recycled water has been approved for dust control and soil compaction. Here's the fill station. This is right by the library and the Scotts Valley Senior Center. We have 1, 2, 3 places for people to fill up. So you can see people have brought in, large totes, smaller barrels. We've seen people out there with like 1 gallon jugs. So yeah, that was a program. It was free water to try and provide some sort of drought assistance to the ratepayers and citizens of Scotts Valley. Speaking of Scotts Valley, they are the ones that own and operate the wastewater reclamation facility. And then you remember when we got past that filtration, there's that little section where they started the water recycling for the tertiary grade. They've been producing recycled water since 2002. The plant has been there forever. And again, they're regulated by local agencies, regional agencies, federal agencies, state agencies. There's a lot of regulation in wastewater. They do have an excellent facility down there. If you guys are ever bored and interested, they do a pretty cool tour. So here's a zoomed out map of Scotts Valley. So we're sitting right here. Mount Herman, Scotts Valley Drive, Highway 17. The areas that are shaded in right here are areas that currently can receive recycled water. I mentioned that tank behind Scotts Valley High School. We've got our booster station right here. So that booster station again just feeds this area right here. All of this runs off this main. So we've got that pressure regulating station. So everything that heads down to Mount Herman and Lockwood Lane, that's going to be about 60, 70 PSI. Everything that runs here is going to be about 120 PSI. It gets down to about 190 by the booster station. So again, this pump will kick things on and off and maintain between 60 and 110 PSI in that area. But again, we've got, you guys can probably point and see where your recycled water use site is. But yeah, the idea is that's a distribution system, 14 miles total, 63 sites right now. So we've talked about our state regulator, we've talked about the water district, we've talked about the city, the producer of recycled water, and then now it's our customers. All of our customers should be responsible for it. But as a site supervisor, you guys are the fall guys. So if something goes wrong, you're the people that I'm going to call. So responsible for the safe and permitted use of recycled water at your site. So you guys are responsible for the operation and maintenance of the on-site recycled water system. This is a site map. Every recycled water site should have one. And by should, they do have one. I have copies of them. If you guys ever need them, I'd be more than happy to provide you with them. In fact, I should email them out to everybody, just so they have a copy. I don't like this one that much. There's a couple things that I do like. One, there's a street address, so at least we know where this is. We know it's the water district office. I don't know why we have the AC unit in here. I don't think that matters for a recycled water use site. So I wouldn't put that in there. The rain barrel, okay, it's an auxiliary source of water. And if there's a rain barrel, there's a chance that that water is going to be used somewhere. So that's important in the sense that, hey, it's another water related thing. These numbers, I would assume, correspond to different irrigation zones. Valve question mark. Before I write that down, I would probably go check and see if it is a valve or not. This doesn't instill a lot of confidence in me in the sense that if there's a break or something that went wrong, if I pick this up, I just put it back down and start to physically go verify, because this isn't giving me a lot of information.
Well, they gave the AC unit for orientation.
Okay.
That way, if you're looking for valve number 8, you know it's on the, if you're looking at it, it's on the right side of the AC unit.
Okay. Yeah, that works. So this is what I did is I went out there and I walked through the entire site. I put down where the recycled water meter is, because if there is a leak, that's probably where you're going to shut it off at. I put down where the signage is, because every recycled water use site should be delineated by, there's an irrigation system that's got recycled water in there. What we did is we were able to not only verify what these numbers correlated with, we talked about whether it was spray irrigation, drip irrigation. There's a potable water meter. There's a backflow prevention device. And then we drew the most likely area where that water is going to enter into the building. We've got a fire service over here. It's good to know. Recycle water hose. So hose bibs aren't allowed on recycle water use sites, but you can have a quick connect, which wasn't on the original plan. So we've got a hose that's back out there. It's got a recycle water tag on it, so you know not to use it on potable water. And then you can put it into the quick connect and you're off to the races. So this is a little bit better. We added in Scotts Valley Drive. I don't know if that was in the last one or not. Oh. So again, more information is better than not. Let's change the orientation of this one. This is the original as-built for the building. So again, in later years, I came out, I didn't put my fancy legend on there, which I should have. I wrote in, there's bathrooms on the second floor. Oh, also housekeeping note, if you guys do need to use the restroom, there are restrooms down there. There's water, there's a Keurig if you guys want. Sorry, I should have done that at the beginning. My apologies. How are we doing on time? Do we need to take a break? 9:42. We'll do a break in a little bit. So again, site map. It has information for, these are two separate sites, but it's got information for the neighboring property too. So if there was a leak somewhere around, like say right here, we can still find out, hey, it's actually on this system. We need to shut this meter off, not this meter. So again, maps come in many shapes and sizes. The most important thing about a recycle water use map is we want to be able to use that as a tool to quickly identify the solution for if we have any potential issues. I like this map. It's fancy. It was done in a CAD program. This is McDorset Park, just across the street. You can see where the potable lines run. They've identified areas. They've got where their quick connects are. They've got their valve boxes and where those lines run. They've got a drinking fountain marked out. They've got where their signs are supposed to be. You know what I don't like about this map? None of that's accurate. There's one valve here, there's two valves here, that's still there, that's still there. These are here. But yeah, these lines. So the city's been in the process of rebuilding that system. And what they're doing is they've created a new map. They're going to run through it. And then when they're done with their renovation, Brody and I will go out there and perform another cross connection to verify the accuracy and make sure that there's absolutely no connection between their potable and their recycled water systems. So another thing about having information on a map is making sure that information is correct. So we just went over the operation and maintenance of that recycled water system. Another one is preventing cross connections that could harm our potable drinking water supply. I think 4, don't drink the water. Another way we can ensure that is making sure that we don't have cross connections. Every recycled water use site has a backflow prevention device on their potable line. So again, this device is to ensure that water only travels one way through this pipe. So at the water meter, we're going to have a backflow prevention device. These have to get tested annually. We've got a whole section on backflow. Just wait, we'll get there. But yeah, preventing cross connections. We also, all of our water meters, we can now tell what direction that water is flowing. So if we notice that there's any backflow on a potable meter at a recycled water use site, Brody's got alarm set up, so it'll notify him. We'll immediately go out and check out the situation. That's never happened. I don't anticipate that happening, but it is a tool that we have in our toolbox to again, stay on top of it, prevent the cross connection between a potable and a recycled water system. Human storm drain creek contact. We talked about that earlier. These are points that I just really want to drive home. Again, 5, don't drink the water. Don't drink recycled water. Water use efficiency, don't have ponding, don't have runoff, don't have overspray. Ponding can be an issue with recycled water. There's been more like, there's a chance for mosquito breeding, a bunch of other stuff, and county vector control comes in, something that we can avoid. And then serving as a 24-hour contact for the recycled water use site. Again, if there is an issue, we might need to get a hold of you. So one thing that I love doing is going through the list and finding out that the person retired 2 years ago, and that's why they haven't been returning my phone calls. If there's things that change at the site, I like to hear about it. I drive by all these sites every day. So yeah, if there's any concern or say, hey, like we're planning on completely ripping up everything and redoing it, give me a call, let me know, because any new development in Scotts Valley, any time there's a change of ownership, Brody is aware of it. And then, you know, we've got operators that are driving around town all day, checking different things out. So if we see the city of Scotts Valley, they take care of the operation and maintenance of the library. And I called Brody one day and I'm like, hey, I was just driving by and he's like, the library? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I haven't been called about it either, but I went and I locked off the meter. And so I was like, oh, smart. So if they need water, they're going to have to call us. And we're like, okay, cool. You just changed all the plumbing. We need to do a cross connection out there. And well, why didn't you go to the recycle water site supervisor training? So the idea is we pay attention to a lot of this stuff. So if there is major piping changes, it's good for us to know. We'll run a cross connection out there, make sure that everything's all good. But yeah, tracking down personnel, it's always a pain. I have like 2 or 3 people that reached out like, hey, I'm finally going to retire. This is a new person that's taking over for my position. I just wanted to introduce you guys. I love that. It's great. And it builds my confidence in saying, like, hey, I can call this person if there's an issue and let them know. Brody and I are very nice people. We want you guys to feel comfortable reaching out to us. If you guys need anything, you know, Thomas and I spent 3 weeks chasing down a leak, and we could have sworn it was a recycle water leak, and it wasn't. It was a potable water leak, but we had everyone out there. So yeah, we're here to help. We want to be helpful. Every year we'll send these out. Again, this is one of the forms that I want to have on that online portal. So you can just sit there, hit a couple boxes on here. We'll have a section for comments in there, and then you can DocuSign and send it in. But this is a fraction of what I do quarterly for the 63 sites that we have. But verifying that we don't have runoff. Sorry, I know it's probably difficult to read from where you guys are at, but verifying that there's no runoff. Does it smell like wastewater, or does it smell like a beautiful landscape? Right? We're focusing on it smelling like a beautiful landscape. So if it smells like wastewater, or there's like an impoundment and it's mucky. So that's something to be like, hey, why is it sounding like it? Is there ponding, mosquito breeding? Is there leaks or water main breaks? Are the drip irrigation working? Are any of the sprinklers popped off and just geysering? And then do we have advisory tags, signs, stickers? And are they legible? So again, that's usually I get that in my quarterly thing, but this is a great time if you don't want to actually call me, but you can sit there and say, hey, no, we don't have signs. Then I will call you or reach out, or I'll drive by the site and verify that your signage is consistent with what's on the site plan. If it's not, I'll add signage. An easy way to contact us is through the main office, 438-2363. In the event that it is before 7:30 or after 5 p.m., we have a pre-recorded message. If it's an emergency, it'll direct you to our dispatch, which we share with the Scotts Valley Police Department. They're very friendly. We have an on-call operator 24/7 that usually has a 20 to 40-minute response time. So if, we'll get into the water smart thing, but if you or one of your clients calls you and says, hey, it's 2 a.m. and there's this huge geyser coming from the landscape, you guys need to come out here and fix it. You can call us. We'll send one of our guys out there. They'll shut off the water meter, and then we'll notify you of what happened, and then we can work together to try and rectify that issue, whatever it may be. Here's the police department's non-emergency line, 440-5670. Again, they'll page out one of our operators, or they can send out one of their patrol units. So that's a good number to have. I believe that's on their website as well. But yeah, usually most water related issues won't require a 911 phone call. But when in doubt, it's always good to have this, but you could always use 911, but depending whether you're using a landline or a cell phone, it might go to the county dispatch, not Scotts Valley. So usually water related issues, call the non-emergency line. And then, contact us if there's a change in the site supervisor. If you have a big leak or you've made major alterations to the recycled water system, the repair thing depends really on the severity of the repair. If it's just a repair clamp or you're changing out an emitter head, you don't have to call us for something like that. But if it's a major thing, especially if you're digging out around the broken pipe and then you find like 3 or 4 other pipes that are in there, if you've ever got a question, we can always come out. We're here to help. We want to be your friendly local water agency. So if you run into that issue, give us a call. We can always show up. Anytime you have a concern, say, hey, this water smells really funny right now, or why is my water coming out black? Or, hey, the plumber's here and you guys turned off the water meter, but we still have water at all the fixtures inside. So if there's any concern about a chance at there being a cross connection, give us a phone call. And yeah, anything else, we're happy to help. Yes, backflow prevention. We'll get into cross connections, but on a very basic level, backflow prevention is the undesired travel of water through a pipe in an unintended direction. For example, if I turned on the sink over in the corner and water didn't come out, but you could hear air being sucked in, it's like, well, that's not why I turned on the sink. I wanted water. So usually having water move in one direction is important, especially with recycled water use sites because of the degree of hazard. You've got 2 different types of water. And so the idea is we want to prevent that cross connection, but there's 2 types of backflow that happens. There's back pressure and then back siphonage. So back pressure, a good example of that would be we're in a 2-story building. If we turn the water off, then we came down to the lowest fixture, we turn that on, we drain all that pressure. So you can imagine if we were in a big sky rise that was, 50 stories tall, and we shut off the water meter, and then we opened up a hose bib right next to that water meter, all of that water would drain out of that building. Backflow prevention devices, this has 2 independently acting check valves on it. So there's an arrow right here. Water is supposed to move in this direction. There's a couple different types of backflow device that we'll get into. All of your water use sites will have, at a minimum, actually, there are 2 sites that are approved to use double checks. But every other site is required to have a reduced pressure principal device. Brody also administers a backflow prevention program. So annually, your site will get a testing notice. It'll list out the devices, the serial numbers, the make, model, size, and then I think you even include who tested it last.
And their contact information.
and their contact information. So it's an important program. It protects drinking water. So this is a good example of back siphonage. So let's say we're sitting here watching me do a really good job at a presentation, and then we hear screeching and a car hits a hydrant down Scotts Valley Drive. If we don't have a backflow prevention device, all this water is going to get sucked out of here and blow out into the street. So that's a good example of back siphonage. And so there are direct and indirect cross connections, and a direct cross connection would be subject to both back pressure and back siphonage. So backflow prevention devices, we just took a look at that nice RP device. How could we prevent this? Put a little backflow device there. You see what I did? Pretty snazzy with the tools I'm given. So again, we have these two independently acting check valves, and then we've got a relief port. So if, for example, one or both of these valves fail, this relief port is still set up to dump. So all that water can come through here. So in this situation, it's not bad, but what if that is not a bathtub full of potable water? What if that's a hose that's been submerged in a bunch of pesticide? So then in a backflow situation, that pesticide can be pulled back into the water main. And even if it doesn't come out here, it still could be in that water main and contaminate our public water supply. So the idea is a pretty simple device, can go a long way, and we'll cover some case studies later about just some really avoidable mistakes. Again, same device as you saw, but there's a picture of it. Again, you guys have these on your sites. Oftentimes, there'll be a drip out of this vent. Usually means it's working just fine. If it's something that keeps going on, give us a call. We can, Brody are both certified to test and repair these devices. So yeah, usually you can just reestablish the zone of pressure across the device, but sometimes it requires a little bit more work. You can kind of see it on this one, but there's a gasket right here. And sometimes these will tear, or over periods of time, they'll, as they fluctuate, they'll start to kind of like jellyfish and lose some of the integrity. And so that could lead to a drip. So yeah, if you see one of those dripping, give us a call. We'll come fix it. Again, we've talked about cross connections and why we don't want to drink the water. And then we talked about direct and indirect cross connections. I think I could get into the, I think I have a good, yeah. So yeah, that direct cross connection we talked about earlier, subject to both back siphonage and back pressure. Indirect cross connection is just back siphonage, which again would be someone hitting a hydrant out on that street. Oh, yes, famous incidents of crossing. Does anyone have any questions? I'm sorry, I'm rushing through this. You go.
So if this guy's dripping, so I do see that on job sites a lot where it'll drip, but then stop.
Yeah.
So if it drips and stops, don't worry about it, but if it just like keeps.
If it's constantly dumping, yeah.
Okay.
So the big thing with this is it's a reduced pressure principle. So there's about 8 to 10 PSI lost through this. When water is not flowing, these valves will close. Again, they're in the test that you do, you measure exactly what level they're going to close at and with how much tensile force. And then the relief port, you also check when this opens. So usually with like a 2 or 3 PSI fluctuation, that's where you can see some dripping out of it. So anytime there's downstream or upstream pressure fluctuations, which happen all the time, you know, we work to maintain a pressure in our distribution system that provides for adequate pressure at the top of some of the hills, which means if we're having 20 PSI here on the valley floor, it could be 100, 150 PSI. And that's a firefighting requirement. We're taking a look into, Brody's been doing some hydraulic modeling and taking a look at how we can reduce pressure in certain areas, because that'll help minimize wear and tear on not only your potable fixtures, but also, our appurtenances that we have. So yeah, a small little pressure fluctuation, which could be the use of someone opening up a hydrant, someone just pulling a lot of water at one point. So it's normal for them to drift.
Okay. And then the direct versus indirect.
Yeah.
So you said indirect
Is
cross connection is like water from this building going into the main line?
right. So indirect would be if there is back siphonage.
Okay,
So the idea is, say we have a pond, like a barrel of water, and I've got a hose into it. So back siphonage would be, I start pulling water through the hose and get it to come out. Back pressure would be, I put that hose underneath the bottom of that barrel. And so because of its altitude or elevation, water will then come down. It'll have that back pressure.
and they're both dangerous to contaminating the main line?
Absolutely.
Okay,
So that's why we have the backflow prevention devices on recycle water sites, but there's a lot of other sites that have them as well. So dialysis clinics, I don't want that water coming back through and getting into the main.
Hospitals, vets.
Yeah,
Are there-
restaurants.
are there recycled water sites that don't have backflows on the recycled water?
There's one exception, which would be an air gap,
Oh,
and
We don't require backflows on the recycled connection, the potable connections at the site. that
oh,
have-
I see, okay, okay.
yeah. So there are sites, so everything is based off of degree of hazard. So the idea is if, I think all of our schools have it, but that degree of hazard is related to, they have recycled water on site. A lot of places that are multi-story or based off of the nature of their business. So we've pulled business permits from the city, and we've verified that businesses that are, say, in a medical nature or a veterinary nature, we make sure that those have backflow
But
devices.
the average house doesn't need it
Correct.
because they're just not, like, if you could still have an issue, but it's not as likely or it's not as dangerous.
Exactly.
Okay,
For example, a lot of houses, what they'll do is they'll have their potable water line, their domestic line that goes to their house, and then right before it gets to the house, it'll tee off over to their own irrigation system. And so oftentimes people will put a backflow prevention device on that tee, protecting that irrigation system. For me, I would say, put it right behind the meter, because then it's protecting the water system from the house and there. But if it's a single story house, there's a low chance, you only have that possibility for an indirect cross connection if something gets hit. But things get hit all the time. So I recommend to people, hey, put a check valve behind the meter, because then your house won't drain out in an emergency like that.
behind the water meter?
Yeah.
Okay, but then would it fall on you guys if it's before the meter? How does it?
So it would be behind the meter.
Oh,
So
might be.
yeah, so
Oh,
we've got our valve, the meter. Usually we have a customer side shut off in there, and then, backflow device.
One of those, but then they have to get it tested yearly.
Correct. So there's a couple different types of backflow prevention devices. The ultimate, the best is an air gap. It's not an actual testable device. You guys are all familiar with air gaps. You guys deal with them every day. But this sink right here, if this basin was full of a dangerous toxic chemical and we didn't have a backflow prevention device and something got hit out there, a toxic chemical wouldn't come here. But if we did that and we submerge that in there, boom, that's a direct cross connection. So the idea is an air gap prevents, water's not going to magically travel up here. So that's been something that's been beneficial. That is the highest form of protection that we have. So the wastewater treatment facility, they have potable water that feeds their building. One of the things that we do is we prevent any chance for a cross connection or a backflow incident there by, we have our water and then there's a tank that's on a float. So water, we've got, the law is the distance has to be 2 times the diameter of the inlet pipe. So this is a 3/4, 1 inch. This is 3/4. 3/4. So it would have to be 1.5 inches. So if this was feeding into the tank, this is feeding into something, you'd have to have a minimum of 1.5 inches right there. And it can never be less than 1 inch, even if it's something like a 1/4 inch pipe, you still want 1 inch of separation there. So yeah, the wastewater plant goes in, fills into a vessel that's operated on a float, and then they have a pump. So they have to create their own pressure for their system. That's one of the drawbacks about an air gap system. The next highest level of protection would be the RP, which again, based off degree of hazard is why we have it at recycled water use sites, medical facilities, all that fun stuff. There's a double check. A double check device is just these 2 check valves. It doesn't have the relief port. Then we also have AVBs, SVBs, PVBs. Brody and I have a little side project right now where we're trying to identify all the ones in our system and get rid of them. They're really mainly only supposed to be used for, well, take that back. For the testable devices that we see in our system, it's really only on irrigation systems. And I think there's only 3 or 4. And so we're gonna eventually take those out and require an RP on that system or reevaluate the need at that site. Because we see a lot of them out there and a lot of them aren't being tested. So if there is a device, we got to make sure it's staying tested and functioning or we get rid of it. But you do actually see those vacuum breakers. Urinals are a good example. They have in the flushometer, it's essentially built exactly like that, just so water can't, retreat back in. So there are backflow prevention devices everywhere in your everyday life. We just don't always see them or identify them.
Let's take a 5-minute break for everyone.
Let's take a 5-minute break. There's water, there's restrooms down there. If you got any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. I'm gonna check in real quick with Alan and see how this is going on his end.
Right. John Hawkins from the Cove.
Oh, we've been.
Yes, a few times.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing okay.
Hanging in there?
One problem that I see is that when we get a overusage alert, it goes to our management company. And then they try to email us and
Are you watching? Is it going all right?
Let's fix that right now.
we get a notice.
Okay, cool.
We're talking the water.
All right, no worries.
We call that.
How many F-bombs have I dropped?
5.
No,
Thank you. Awesome.
that's a good question. I don't know what to
I've
call
been
it.
way better than normal. Okay, cool. All right. Well, we're gonna take a quick 5-minute break and then I'll
Of course.
I'll get back at you.
The common area recycled water, right?
back.
Yeah.
So.
So goes the.
Yeah, we're doing this without any of my notes. I usually
Tank.
have notes that I can go off.
I think I feel that would be really my expertise, but I can do it. Yeah. There we go.
Yep.
Pumpkins?
Yeah, TOMKINS.
Okay. Sure you don't, sir.
The Cove HOA, John.
Do all fire hydrants have the recycled water?
We have 6 that do, but every other, they use potable. Yeah, so if it's not a purple hydrant, then it's gonna be,
Regular water.
exactly. So, and then
If I'm not.
those hydrants, their cap
Coworker upstairs.
is gonna be painted either red, orange, green, or blue.
Mhm.
And that's based off pressure
Okay,
and flow rate. So when the fire department shows up,
they know what to, okay.
exactly. So blue, I think, is 2,000 gallons a minute and more. Green is, I think, 1,000 to 2,000. Orange is 500, 2,000, and
Oh, yeah, you-
red is
Where's the screen?
Yeah.
really not a lot of flow or pressure. If you want to, a great thing to throw out at parties if you really want to impress someone about the color for hydrants. So,
Watch, there'll be a firefighter there and he'll be like, I already knew that.
News to put you in there because
of course, that's what it is.
do we not want it to go these
But,
at all?
Are you guys all familiar with Water Smart?
That's pulsing.
We have a program that's free for customers to sign up, but essentially it allows looking for the.
Tell you what, I will.
Oh, the online will shows you the flow?
Yeah, no, those things are great because you can set up alerts. You can check use history.
We went to.
When they call and say we have a leak,
Inspection,
they
I think you'll be able to do-
Exactly, yeah.
What you'll see is.
Well, no, and it's like, but Thomas and I were chasing down that one leak.
It's kind of what you'll see.
Yeah, we had all hands on deck, being like,
Settings.
it shouldn't be this difficult. Like, where is it? I pulled up Water Smart and there's, both houses had leaks too. So I will, it's gotta be on them. And then of course they go and they fix the
There you
leak
go.
and the water's still coming.
2 times your normal views.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm, but
Broken sprinkler.
it's a great tool.
You can mess around with this.
I mean, like, hey, water use has been really high or really low in this area. Because we have different pressure zones around the system. So we see like usage out of tanks, be like, hey, maybe this tank's not communicating because it's been flatlined for a long time.
For your
Like,
residents.
Oh, no, there's no one using water and hasn't used water.
Yeah, I get those emails. I don't know if it's because I signed up
I think,
smart, but I get them like, is this,
Yeah.
like after COVID, they're like, is this real water usage now?
yeah. Well, I think, so during COVID, that's when we were finishing up our meter exchange program. So it was like during the evacuation, we still had to show up to make sure that we were producing drinking water.
Might mean. When it's.
And then because like Starbucks was finally closed for a day, we were able to go be like, hey, we can change all these meters with, yeah, so it was beneficial.
I know there was.
But again, those things, there's, I think, a machine learning component to it where it'll analyze not only the site's usage and that specific whatever's downstream of that meter, but then it'll also take a look at
The installer.
every other meter that's reporting to their overall system.
So that was.
So it can sit there and start to identify, hey,
And then.
there's an irrigation leak or there's a leak inside of the house, or because it's leaking at this rate, it's most likely a toilet leak. So it helps sort of give suggestions of being like, hey, I don't see a leak. I went out, I checked my meter, it's not spinning. It's like, well, it looks like it's only happening, between like 2 and 4 a.m. And that's when your irrigation system kicks on. So, yeah, it's a pretty useful tool.
Yeah, we get the toilet one a lot.
Yeah.
No, I remember.
Well, and you guys just have, I guess the gym has their own restrooms and everything, and then you just got the ones, there's 2 bathrooms upstairs and.
2 downstairs. They have these really weird old toilets.
Yeah.
that
They're antiques.
I remember this conversation.
They're dinosaurs and
Yeah.
Certified back.
they leak really easily.
He's actually.
Yeah, no, some of those older toilets can be finicky. When we were looking at,
Maybe he does. Yeah.
this is just the recycled water use. But I did a breakdown of,
Oh, really?
our average demand. I've got a spreadsheet where it just looks at every day of the last 10 years.
Yeah.
What's our average been?
So all he's got.
So we have an idea of like, hey, every year our usage jumps up 200 gallons a minute in this month.
Yeah,
So,
so
hey,
there's-
let's get our treatment plants ready to roll.
On these
And,
guys, all he needs to have access to are these guys. So
right before the drought, I mean, you could match up the conservation payday programs with these huge declines in water use. And so
When I
moving away from those 5 gallon per flush toilets to like the 1.8, like the 1.2, it was like, there was,
oh, that
it was insane how much water
Fucking
like
liar.
it's just dropped off. And
So
we had a
anyway,
very aggressive
that's what
program,
I
I
saw.
think in
And maybe you
2014.
hear more complaints, you might want to do something
We,
else, but
We
had a semi truck pull up over at Ace and we were
Handing toilets out.
handing toilets out. And it was just like, it was a really weird thing to come in and volunteer for. But it made a huge impact. And there's a property manager who's like, yeah, I've got a rental with like 4 or 5 units in it. How many toilets I can get? I'm like,
What's going on? So we
you
actually.
want 4 or 5? And he's like, yeah, let's just replace all of them. Here you go. So, yeah.
I believe you, but he seems to be responsible.
Some of those old toilets are
On top of things.
pretty awesome, but you can also imagine,
communication's good.
Yeah.
at the wastewater plant,
20 years, and when he responded back like that, I'm like.
the flow is very different from 2 decades ago where there's a lot more water going down. Now it's a bit more concentrated. So it's made the wastewater treatment side of things.
So it's, I could look it up.
It was, they're from Salina.
But yeah, no, that's a great facility.
No,
Getting thicker water.
System, right?
Yeah.
Tino's plumbing.
Yeah, they were great.
Okay.
The guy that came.
I don't remember where we left off. I think we were at famous cross connections.
He actually had to order a new, because ours were different, he had to order a new device for it. They were great.
You guys.
Oh, that's another thing I'm gonna mention. I'll bring it up later.
Had an issue.
The city does win awards
When I show people,
for their,
oh, you gotta do a vertical. I'm like,
for their
The developer did
wastewater plant.
put it probably back.
They do a really good job.
Stuff up and they actually reached out to me and I have to do, UNC controls all of it. And, it's the only vertical RP device they sell. So it's the dollar device, I think for those are good.
At least, yeah. We had a garbage truck back in the second one in October and it hit up. I was like.
No, they're, I remember one of the testers coming out there.
For the building, so that's the HOA's responsibility. And, you know, people think that. Millions of dollars.
That's good HOA, right? Sit down and not.
Brutal.
Well, yeah, you've got my contact. If you have any questions with,
Thank you.
feel free to shoot me. Let me see my schedule.
I think that's everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed the break. Before we jump back into it, are there any questions, concerns, comments, feedback, critiques?
Yes, I have questions.
Yeah.
Please don't take this critical at all. So I live in a residential house.
Mhm.
And all I'm doing is residential stuff, I don't have chemicals or anything. And we have recycled water on plant in our townhome facility.
Mhm.
So obviously there's been cross checks done when the construction is complete. If we're not changing any plumbing, if we're not changing anything out there, why do I have a backflow?
You have a backflow
So there's
because,
no way for that recycled water to get into my house.
Correct.
Away from my house to get to the recycled water.
absolutely.
Why do I have a backflow?
We can bring it back to the people that are forcing you to be here. We're almost there,
Waterboard.
So in Title 17, they talk about the responsibilities of protection, the requirement for site supervisors, and the location and type of backflow based off of. So that is a state requirement. And my personal answer to that is I live in a residential, I don't have recycled water on there, but I don't necessarily trust all my neighbors. And while we haven't had a cross connection incident. There have been backflow incidents. Luckily, there wasn't anything that was harmful. It wasn't related to recycled water. But the reason that Brody and I do these cross connection inspections every 4 years is because there are things that change, and you find out that there are people that have a 55-gallon drum that they're using to wash their hands. So yes, on paper it makes sense, but the idea is people will always take shortcuts. I used to have some pictures in an older one, an older presentation that I had, but the idea with that is there are some people that just, when they're in the thick of it, they're just trying to fix whatever, and they say, hey, well, there's this pipe right here. In an ideal world, every tertiary grade recycled water would be in, purple pipe like this. The problem is it would be an unreasonable expectation if we were converting a site over to make them pull up every piece of pipe just to put in one that's a different color. So getting back to your question is, we verified the complete separation of the two systems, but that's something that only happens every 4 years. So if someone were to make a connection, whether it's a homeowner, landscaping contractor, a plumbing contractor, just a general handyman, Brody and I have attended days and days, if not weeks and weeks of training related to backflow prevention and cross connections. We both hold licenses from the American Water Works Association. We're the only two people in Scotts Valley that are qualified and certified to do these inspections. And we offer them free of charge. It's a great deal. There's people that'll charge you $10,000, $15,000 to run through certain sites. So it being free of charge is definitely a service to not only our customers, but all the ratepayers that have to drink the potable water as well. But yeah, again, these regulations come from way up top. There are places that have requested alternative backflow prevention plans. In our regional board, they're a bit more stringent, mainly because of some of our other natural resources we have around here. But there are places in California that were able to submit a request where they run their recycle system at like 50 PSI and their potable system at 100 PSI. So if there even was a cross connection, that potable water would be exerting more force than the recycle, so it wouldn't be able to come back in. Now the question is if there is a direct cross connection right there, and then the hydrant gets hit, there's a catastrophic event, that could then pull because of that fluctuation in pressure. And I think they also require the shutdown tests every year instead of every 4 years. So.
Well, it's hitting us for $2,000 plus a year, and it's a lot of money.
It is. No, absolutely. As a guardian of public health and our public water system, the reason I love backflow prevention devices is it keeps everybody safe. And yeah, I understand it's definitely expensive. There are places, Scottsboro Townhomes, for example, that Coastal Evergreen takes care of. They expressed interest in getting recycled water, but they've got 100 homes in there. So the
cost of recycled water is a lot less for landscaping than potable water. So
it's probably a break even in there.
yeah, it might be. I don't know what the plus minus is on that, but it's definitely more cost effective.
And it's drought proof, But yeah, unfortunately, there is a requirement from the state for those backflow requirements. But no, that's a very good question, because in a perfect world, we never have that issue, and we will never have to worry about that issue. So yeah, that's unfortunately what it comes down to. But that's a great segue into our famous incidents in cross connection history. Are there any other questions before we jump? Oh man,
I gotta take off. I got dentist.
okay. hit the right button this time. All right, famous incidents in cross connection history. This is a new segment that we added on this past year. I've done 4 of these trainings in person. It's the first one we're doing live and online. I've attended, 14 or 15 from other water agencies since December of last year. So yeah, while it's not a fun training, trust me, I know, I've done a lot of them. But some people have started throwing in information. So as I mentioned earlier, Brody and I have done a lot of coursework related to backflow prevention and cross connection prevention. And in those, almost always you'll hear about this, the Chicago Fair. I think I had notes for it. Yeah, there we go. So I'll read this. But yeah, 1933 World's Fair. This is all these things that we're going to go over are incredibly avoidable. This is in American history. This is the worst cross connection history that we've been able to document and study. But in 1933, there's an improperly designed plumbing system. So that caused a backflow incident. If you guys are familiar with dysentery, it's a parasitic infection of the colon resulting in symptoms of dysentery like fever, chills, abdominal discomfort, and diarrhea. At the 1933 World's Fair, 1,409 people came down with amoebic dysentery. 98 people died. Again, that's 98 people died for a completely avoidable thing. And so this is what happened. It's got an incubation period of 12 to 30 days. So most people had already gone home by the time they got sick. People were traveling from all over the country. And this wasn't at a time where doctors were having conferences on Zoom and being like, oh yeah, I just had 5 people that just got back from Chicago that had dysentery. So it took a while for people to try and kind of start to trace things back. But they realized that, hey, all these people are getting sick. World's Fair brings in a lot of money. So the city of Chicago was like, no, let the show go on. You know, just because some people are sick doesn't mean it's a big deal. But that was just Chicago itself. There were people all over the US that were getting sick. So they didn't want to scare tourists. There was cross connections that contaminated the water supply in 2 hotels that people were staying at. I think it was something with, there was a kitchen and they were butchering poultry or they're butchering some animal in there. And that's essentially how it got spread throughout. So people that were staying in that hotel got incredibly sick. A lot of people, way too many people passed. So that's one that's always talked about. Let's see if I can just do that. Pennsylvania, Allegheny County housing. I decided to use this because it's very funny. So you'll be glad to call it home. 1981, the county spent like $300,000 to replace all the plumbing in this housing authority project because chlordane and hepichlor, I think that's Roundup essentially. So it had been banned for agricultural use in its form that they had there. Yeah, chlordane is, we'll talk about it in a little bit because it's nasty stuff. So short-term effects like tremors and convulsions, long-term effects, seizures, or nervous system issues, hepichlor, seizures and liver damage. But a pesticide contractor was mixing pesticides. We had talked about the pool thing and a hose submerged into a basin with something toxic. Essentially what happened, they were installing a gate valve somewhere in the property. There was a break, loss of pressure. So it siphoned, that back siphon thing that we talked about earlier, back siphoned the concentrated pesticide into the distribution system in that housing authority. So they flushed out. I think they spent, what, 30 days Um, so yeah, 75 apartments, 300 people, it was all contaminated. Yeah, 27 days they had no water at this place. So they might say you'll be glad to call it home, but they had to transport water in for drinking, for cooking, for bathing. Eventually, they just said, "Hey, we're going to replace all the plumbing in this building." It's a lot of work, 300 grand in 1981 money. But again, that could have been prevented with a backflow prevention device located right at that tank, or I've got one in my truck. Let me go grab that really quickly. Atmospheric vacuum breakers. Really cool little tool.
Irrigation yard?
It's just
No. That's not from. Nope.
all right. So this is a hose bib vacuum breaker. I think it's like $12 at Ace. Yeah. But essentially you put this on a hose bib and it prevents the backflow. It essentially creates an air gap, not a full air gap, but it prevents water from being back siphoned in. So if they put a $12 device on that hose that was filling in there, it wouldn't have back siphoned into the system. That could have saved $300,000. I'll pass this around if you guys want. That little operating nut on the side is designed so you can tighten it down and then it breaks. So then people can't just twist it off. I think in 2016, they required that on all new developments. If you have a hose bib.
I think so, yeah.
So. Yeah. If you were to sit there and say, do I want to spend $300,000 replacing all this plumbing or $12 to install that little device? I would go with that device all day. Woodsboro, Maryland. Has anyone been to Woodsboro, Maryland? Me neither. June 1983, yellow gushy stuff was coming out of the faucets in Woodsboro, Maryland. So of course they sat there and they called the water district and said, "Hey, why is yellow gushy stuff coming out of our faucets?" So they started taking samples, but samples take a while. So there's other investigatory activities that happened, but essentially said, "Hey, don't drink the water, especially if it's yellow and gushy." So different departments got together, pretty much said, do not drink, do not use. So yeah, you can flush toilets with it. And then the city came out and started flushing all their water mains. Just usually if there's something, the easiest thing to do is just keep flushing until there's no trace of it, and then you start testing for it. So looks like paraquat backflowed into the town system. They weren't necessarily, they didn't say exactly how they found out what the chemical was, but yeah, I think this is the one that's or no, glyphosate is the so this is 28 times more toxic than glyphosate. So lung scarring, heart failure, respiratory failure, kidney, liver failure. So someone left a valve open between an herbicide holding tank and the public water supply. So they created a cross connection, and then the pump failed in the town, change in pressure. So it siphoned that paraquat back into the system. Luckily, no one died. But it was an expensive burden. And it's also one of those things that a water agency, it's a very important thing for them to instill confidence in their consumers. So when you sit there and you're like, oh yeah, we just put something that could kill you in the water, it doesn't really bode well. It's what you probably see a lot more sales of bottled water in that town. Hawthorne, Fairlawn, and Hawthorne, New Jersey. June 24th, 1987. Construction crew broke a water main. It got repaired, and a customer called and said, hey, the water doesn't look right. So again, this is another avoidable thing. Pesticides had backflowed into the public water system. So an employee at a pest control company was rinsing a tank that had heptachlorine and chloridane, which same stuff that we saw in Pennsylvania. So a couple gallons of that pesticide were sucked through, and even just a couple gallons can affect a whole like, you know, I had mentioned the forever chemicals that we were studying, we'll be sampling for. We sampled for them back in 2013, 2014, but our detection methods have improved. So, you know, one small thing can contaminate a huge, like MTBE, a single drop of MTBE in an Olympic-sized swimming pool will contaminate that water to the point where it's not drinkable. So with this, again, small amount, however, it did get into the system. This stuff doesn't start off too bad, but then it gets worse and worse, and eventually will lead to paralysis or death. So people had consumed it. There's no immediate illnesses or injuries. There's only 63 customers affected by it. But there was several days during the investigation when they were trying to figure it out where they couldn't use their water. Plumbing had to be replaced because the pesticides adhered to the inside of their plumbing systems. But 21 homeowners sued the pest control company for $21 million, and they won. So again, that little vacuum breaker could have saved someone $21 million. And more importantly, it could have prevented someone from getting really sick. I like this picture because it's a nice sunny day in LA, but this guy's spraying fake snow. They have like big water tenders where they mix this stuff. They can spray fake snow for movie sets. And there's kind of a theme going where people are spraying things that you shouldn't be drinking, and you could have installed one of those little vacuum breakers and it wouldn't have been an issue. But they were spraying artificial snow and didn't work right. So connected a garden hose to bring up pressure. Again, there's a water main break, fluctuation of pressure. It started pulling that stuff into the system. So it would be very weird to turn on the tap and have snow coming out of it. But yeah, luckily in this one, no one got sick. No one ingested the water. Luckily, there's a lot of times where you can see the water and be like, I am not drinking that. That looks terrible. But there are other chemicals and other things that you can have that you can't necessarily detect just by the eye or smell. So again, where backflow prevention and cross connection prevention come in, it's paramount. So this is Nate Gillespie. He's our operations manager.
Everyone. Came to check out the show.
Awesome. Yeah. And we're live. We've got Alan and Ryan are
Block the view.
So again, we talked about incidences of cross connections that have happened in the last 100 years. Worst case scenario, you have people that are dying, people that are getting really sick. Best case scenario, there's still people spending a lot of money, and these are avoidable things. And so that's kind of at the heart of the cross connection inspections that we do. You see how I got way more professional when the boss came in. But the cross connection inspection, I will bug you guys probably every 3.5 years to try and get it done before that 4-year period ends. But
That's different than the backflow testing, or is that?
correct.
Okay.
So the backflow testing is we have a certified tester that comes out. The district has a list.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is you have to have a current certification from the AWWA and an approved test kit. And then they can go out. And so we'll disseminate that list with the test paperwork. But this is the annual testing requirement. And that's that $100. But yeah, if you have 20 units, it can be 2,000. But yeah, that is the annual requirement. Every 4 years, what we're going to do is a cross-connection inspection, which is a 2-part shutdown. So at a minimum, we'll have the potable water side depressurized for 1 hour, while the recycled water side is pressurized. And we'll go through and we'll verify that we have flow on every recycled water appurtenance and that there's no flow and a depressurized event for all the potable. Then once we've satisfied that, and again, when we had mentioned those site maps, again, that's really convenient because if I've got 63 sites, I can remember some of the stuff. But even here, Brody and I were doing one, was that last year that we did the inspection here?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I constantly will take an old map and try and update it, see what's changed, what's different, if I made a mistake last time. But we went out for bid for a new landscape contractor here, and he was able to hand over that site map and be like, hey, this is our system right now. So having that map really aids with the cross-connection inspection, because then I can sit there and I know, hey, there's a valve somewhere behind that bush that I can't see right now. I need to get on my hands and knees and find it. Once we take care of the recycled side, we turn off the recycled water and we repressurize the potable water. And we run through that exact same test again and verify that everything on the landscape doesn't have flow. And then everything that is supposed to have potable water has potable water. Anytime there is a flow when there should not be, that's one of those things that it's like, all right, stop. What's going on here? Then work to try and rectify that. So again, that's every 4 years. These inspections must be performed by a certified cross-connection specialist. Brody and I think in Scotts Valley are the only 2 people, not just for the water district. If you want, reach out to me. You can always hire someone to do it privately. I've got a guy who is the head of backflow prevention for the AWWA for California and Nevada. He'd be more than happy to bring his outfit out here and do it. It's not cheap. So work with Brody and I, because right now it's still free. So if your cross connection's coming up sometime in the near future, I'll reach out to you. But there might be a day where that changes. So take advantage of it while it's still here. So again, we just ran through, we shut off, depressurize, and test for water flow on both the potable and the recycle. Run through everything, and then once we confirm the complete absence, and Brody's heard me say this line 100 times, but when we're out there with our staff and we're about to sign off on the final paperwork, I look at everyone on the team and I say, do you feel confident that there's a complete separation between the potable and recycled water supply? And if I get yeses from everybody, we sign off on that paperwork. I have copies of all these. I'm in the process of trying to get everything digital. As far as, I still do hand-drawn maps out there. I mark things up in the field, all the paperwork I do by hand, and then I scan it in. So I do have a folder where we can sit there and take a look at all of the recycled water use sites. So for example, right here, site 12, that's our office. So in this building, you guys saw a couple of iterations of the maps that we did. So I have, results of past cross-connection inspections. I have maps of everything, pictures of the site, copies of our permit, our annual site inspection reports. So I maintain this list for all of our recycled water use sites. So if you ever have a question of like, hey, can I get a copy of my permit? Or, hey, I'm sending someone new out to the site. Can you email me a copy of the map? Be more than happy to do that. Brody and I both have access to this. So if you want to get a hold of either one of us, you know, emailing, having it electronically available is really nice. So another thing that I get to carry in my truck all the time with me is a manila folder like this that's got the emergency cross connection plan in there. So in the event that we do have a cross connection that happens, we have very specific guidelines that we follow in order to rectify that situation. So if you ever have a concern, if there's a potential, if there's a weird, you know, gut feeling, give me a call. Brody and I are more than happy to go out there and check in on things. But yeah, call us immediately, especially if something is happening. But if it's suspected, just give us a call. We'll have do not drink signs. We'll work with the appropriate regulatory agencies to verify that we're doing all the right things. Yeah, just work with us throughout the process because we'll get it fixed. Here's an example of the plan itself. So it really breaks down who we're supposed to talk with. So yeah, we've got that paperwork. It's easy to run through. Luckily, Brady and I have not had to do that yet. And those cross connection inspections and backflow preventers, that helps, and site supervisors. So you guys, now that you're more knowledgeable about recycled water, you know, it's easier to run through this if people are familiar with their use site and rules and regulations related to recycled water. We've got, I think, 10 minutes left, just about. I have an exam that we can run through. I like to run through this together just so everyone kind of knows. And if there's questions or things that people aren't sure of, this will be graded. This will be on your review. Oh. Thank you. Do you guys need pens? Yeah. Really? Yep. Now, I'm not colorblind, but I'm color deficient, and I have trouble reading the difference between red and black. But there's kind of a theme in this, and if you guys pick it up, this is a good thing that you guys can hold on to, and just use as a refresher if you want. So we'll do a little crowd work here. So number one, which of the following are permitted uses for recycled water? A, drinking, B, washing your hands and face, C, cooking, or D, none of the above?
D.
Yep, terrific. Number two, recycled water is the same as potable water.
Nope.
True or false? Exactly, that's false. 3, there shall be no physical connection by either piping or hose bibs between the potable water supply and the recycled water distribution system.
True.
Yep. Again, if you're following along at home, you can see that the red answers are usually the correct ones. But I do need to double check myself. So number 4, the main hazard present when recycled water and potable water are used on the same site is contamination of the potable water supply. True. Number 5, cross-connection inspection will be conducted at each site prior to being served with recycled water. The cross-connection testing can be done by A, the county health department, B, an AWWA certified cross-connection specialist, C, a licensed plumber, D, a landscape contractor, or E, all the above.
B.
It's B, yep. And that's Brody and I, your friendly cross-connection specialists. Number 6, who is responsible for operating and maintaining the customer's recycled water system under the user permit? A, the owner's gardener, B, the property manager, C, the recycled water site supervisor, or D, a licensed plumber?
Me.
C, yes. And again, with number 6, a plumber can be a site supervisor. A property manager or gardener can be a site supervisor. But the requirement is you have to attend this training every 2 years. So that's that separation of it is, if you could be a property manager, but for a recycle water use site, you've got to have that site supervisor certificate, which you guys will be proud owners of in 9 minutes. 7, an on-site supervisor. A, is the 24-hour contact person for the customer site. B, knowledgeable about the principles, practices, and equipment for water recycling. C, is responsible for keeping information regarding the customer's site and agency contacts. D, knows who to contact in case of emergencies, failures, or violations. Or E, all of the above. Very good. Number 8, the safe and efficient use of recycled water is the responsibility of A, the police, B, the grounds maintenance crew, C, the on-site supervisor, or D, none of the above. Yep. This used to be like a 30-question test, and I brought it down to 10 this morning, so
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. 9, which of the following is true about irrigating with recycled water? A, don't irrigate when the ground is saturated or during a heavy rain. B, don't create overspray onto wells, buildings, eating areas, or paved surfaces. C, irrigate only as much as the plants require, or D, all of the above. And number 10, above ground pipes, valves, and other recycled water irrigation equipment should be colored purple so nobody will confuse them with the potable water system. Is that true or false? Terrific. You guys can all hold on to those. Were there any questions about that test? Was there anything that wasn't clear?
If you're adjusting a sprinkler that's on recycled water, like inevitably you're gonna get it on your hands, you're gonna get overspray. Is it just like wash your hands and try not to get any of the spray onto your face? What,
Yeah, unfortunately, inevitably, especially in your field, you're gonna get sprayed. Larry from accounting might be fine, but you guys are boots on the ground. Contact is inevitable. But what do we do after we find contact? So cleaning with potable water is usually the first step. If that's unavailable, one of the nice things about the pandemic is everyone has hand sanitizer now. So I keep hand sanitizer on my truck. And again, when I go back and I ask my staff, hey, does everyone feel confident that there's a complete separation between the potable and the recycled water systems? We're usually doing that at the tailgate of a truck, and I'm passing around, napkins or rags and sanitizer, even if we haven't come into contact with it. If you have cuts or open wounds, I would put a Band-Aid and then maybe something to secure that Band-Aid around there. Oftentimes when we're doing cross connections inspections, I have like 3 or 4 pairs of like nitrile gloves that I can sit there. So if I know I'm going to be submerging my hand into something, I'll try and take active steps to minimize that. So unfortunately, contact with recycled water does happen. For site supervisors, the big thing is making sure that if there's an eating area, you don't have a spray nozzle that's directly at eye level for someone sitting at a picnic bench.
Our kids aren't playing with sprinklers.
Beautiful. Yeah. Like Brody and I were doing a cross connection over at Sky Park earlier this year. And we open up a valve and we're all looking at this area where we anticipated it to, pop up all the spray heads. And we hear a bunch of giggling. We turn around, there's a bunch of kids running through the sprinklers. So it's like we shut it down. We're like, Cody, you got to get these people out of here. So we had to kick everybody off the fields. But, again, with those site plans, we thought that it was going to be right there. And sure enough, we ended up. So, yeah, we went over and said, hey, you guys should go wash up over at the drinking fountain. But, I have seen kids get sprayed with water. It's not fun. Any other questions? Well, at the beginning of the class, we talked about, potable water being an important resource and how as water leaves that faucet and goes into that basin, how it eventually goes down to the wastewater plant. It's either turned into recycled water or it's sent down to Bay Street. Over the past decade, we've had a couple more programs that have come online, I think in 2014, 2015, off Zanka Road in San Jose. There's a Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center. Really, really interesting facility. They were one of the first in the area in Northern California, I believe, that did the advanced purified water, which is a step further than tertiary. I think, yeah, I wrote notes on this. So they use microfiltration, RO or reverse osmosis, and then they use that UV light that we talked about that the city of Scotts Valley also employs. And I think what they were doing was they were using that advanced purified to augment their recycled water, their tertiary grade water, because of they had a high salinity issue in their water. And you don't really want high salinity water if you're using it just for landscape irrigation, which is what you do with recycled water. So they were doing that, but this water was of quality high enough that you could have pumped it back into the ground and helped augment your aquifers. I think at the time it wasn't permitted, so they were using it as an augmentation for their recycle system. And this facility's online. It's been online for a while. Monterey One Water. I really like this project because when I was first getting involved in the industry, I got to do a tour down there and see their wastewater facility. And then in like 2015, 2016, I got invited to, they had a small package plant and they were doing a trial, like a pilot program for the advanced purified. And then just a month ago, I was able to go down and see the full online operating plant. And it's really cool. It's very similar to the advanced purified plant over the hill of Zanka Road. But this is the level of treatment. It's huge, and especially that part of the Central Coast, there's a lot of ag use for it, and so there's ag depends very much on water, and so this helps sort of drought proof that supply. And if we're looking 30, 40 years down the road, this will still be used. So this is a really cool project. Pure Water Monterey. I think it's still in the EIR phase. I don't know if it's moved out of it yet.
Not sure either.
Yeah. But this is an upcoming program. You're going to start at the very beginning of the class. We talked about how water has always been recycled through natural processes. So there's been this branding effort where it's Pure Water Monterey or One Water, but there's this sort of industry mind shift of looking at things as, hey, this is all one water. The treatment's there, but we haven't approved it for drinking water purposes yet, especially recycled water. We've talked about don't drink it. But we're at the point where we can make water that is above drinking standards. And so again, here, it's in the EIR phase. I don't know if they have it intended for potable use. But it's an interesting partnering of a couple different agencies that are working for the benefit of water. And then most recently, I don't know if anyone lives south of Santa Cruz and takes Highway 1 south, but where they're doing the highway widening project, Chanticleer, right by across from the Sheriff's Center, they're building Pure Water SoCal. So that's water that what we're not using and sending down to Bay Street. They've got a tertiary plant that they're then sending water over to that facility for SoCal Creek. So again, there's multi-agency cooperation. But this is a really cool project. We went and I think we were in February, we went and saw it.
Correct. Yeah.
And then Brody and I did a cross connection after. It was a great day. All full of recycled water for us.
Is that where Kaiser was supposed to go?
Correct. So yeah, this is a really cool, if you want to nerd out on water treatment or wastewater treatment, this is a really cool project. And then the downstream benefit is SoCal Creek is combating seawater intrusion and over extraction from some of their wells. So they've identified areas that they can take this water and inject it into the ground to prevent that seawater intrusion. So it's a multifaceted way of protecting the potable supply and future supply for them. So really, really cool projects that, are a half an hour drive away at most. So yeah, if you want pure water, are they at what, 90% completion right now? 80, 90?
I'm not sure where the plant's at, but I know they were targeting to be online in January of 2024. So we'll see if they're able to meet that target.
But yeah, you'll probably see some stuff in the paper. But again, water operators are always friendly and approachable. So if you ever want to go on a tour down there or the wastewater plant or here, feel free to reach out. WaterSmart is a tool that we had mentioned a couple times in the class. I think the Coastal Evergreen office is logged into a couple of accounts. A lot of HOA presidents or maintenance people will be logged in. This is a great way of tracking your water usage, whether it's on your recycle water site or your potable water site. We have staff that's constantly checking into this. You can set alerts. This has been a wonderful tool for water conservation and also troubleshooting. So if you don't want to sit there and handwrite meter reads, you can pop open WaterSmart and take a look at, hey, this is how many gallons went through the meter at 2 o'clock in the morning when I had zone 4 open for irrigation. So this is a great tool. It's free to use. I would highly recommend checking it out. I believe the district is putting on an event next week.
The 27th at the.
So we'll be at the community center.
Senior Center.
Senior Center, terrific. But we'll be doing a live demonstration and working to connect people. If you don't want to be in a group setting, reach out. We can do it over the phone. We can walk you through it, but it's a great tool. I use it every day. I'm lucky in the sense that I can see everybody's account. So if I'm reaching out to a customer, I can pop up their information, and it's more data to make better decisions. So it's a great tool. And now, any questions? Was it fun?
So fun.
Terrific. Well, in 2 years.
All online.
But yeah, with the hope being that this can be pre-recorded. I don't think anyone's written anything in the chat, which is good. Alan, Ryan, if you guys have any questions, mind you that you are in a group setting. Oh no, I muted the chat. That's something we got to change in the future.